A menagerie of exquisite specimens.
Leopards, lions.
Skinned, stuffed, and mounted by a master.
He was a different guy, different cat.
Not everyone can take something that's dead and make it look like it's alive.
Elk, moose, deer, goats.
You're walking into someone's lifelong obsession, their commitment, their passion.
Antelope, water bucks, dikers, dicks. These lines are from Night at Museum.
That was a big get.
Can his sons get this legacy to pay off? Or did they inherit a dying business?
Nobody has an inheritance like the one that we've been bequeathed.
I'm Jamie Colby, and today I'm surrounded by millions of acres of pristine forest near Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm on my way to meet a family who inherited a legacy that evokes the very spirit of this wilderness. They're also left wondering how to preserve it. Hi, Brian.
Hi.
How are you? I'm Jamie.
Good. Nice to meet you, Jamie.
Nice to meet you, too.
Come on, check stuff out.
Love to see the house. Thanks. What? Oh, my God, Brian, what is going on? Oh, my gosh. This is your house? I can't believe it. Looks like a zoo.
My name's Brian Kulash. In 2010, my dad, Steve Kulash, passed away and left us an inheritance with Noah's Ark implications.
Brian tells me that he and his brother Stacy inherited this menagerie from their dad, a taxidermist named Steve Kulash. A series of calamitous events, including the one that caused their father's death, have stunned the brothers. They struggle to carry on his legacy. Kulash, born in 1938, grew up on the family farm in Nelson, British Columbia.
How did he get introduced to taxidermy?
He sent away for mail order taxidermy books, and he started by doing chickens and rabbits and stuff around the farm.
It sets him on a journey that will take him far from the farm, which he leaves when he takes a job as a welder in Vancouver. That pays the bills, but taxidermy remains his passion. In 1959, he marries Rachel Collins, and they raise 3 strapping young lads, Steve Jr., Brian, and the youngest, Stacy, who I'm told has an even bigger surprise for me 40 miles outside Vancouver.
What?
Welcome to the Ark.
What Stacy calls the Ark is a drafty old barn stuffed with the Kulash brothers' strange inheritance. More than 4 decades worth of their dad's taxidermy.
Ark is right. Oh my goodness, you do look like you have 2 of everything. This is incredible.
At first, Steve Kulash fashioned works like these in the basement of the family home. He began with game from his own hunting trips, but soon other hunters brought by their trophies too.
When people seen the quality of the work that he was doing, they all started to come to him.
Did Mom ever say, if you bring another animal in this house, I'm gonna kill you?
Did hear her say that before, but she would always soften her stance, had a bit of coaxing.
Show me a really fine example of your dad's work.
His ibex mount is one of his best works.
Why? What makes it great taxidermy?
He paid a lot of attention to the shape of the eye, the muscles that would make the eyes blink, and tissue. You have to have an artistic eye. Not everyone can take something that's dead and make it look like it's alive. He was an artist.
Like so many artistic types, Steve dreams of actually making a living from his life's passion. In the late 1960s, he pulls the trigger, quitting that welding job and betting his family's future on his skill as a taxidermist.
I remember going with him to empty his locker, and he had said, I'm just going to break free and do my own thing.
He rents a storefront and opens Steve Kulash Taxidermy. Brian pitches in when not working as a meat cutter at a grocery store in Vancouver, while Stacy works full-time at his dad's shop and learns his craft.
Birds of prey are my favorite. They look menacing even when they're standing still.
His dad taught him anyone can learn to stuff a bird, but to turn a lifeless pile of feathers into this, it's about the expression, the pose, the articulation of muscles and limbs. Stacy demonstrates the skills he learned at his father's side.
So now I'm separating the feathers along the breastplate and stomach area. The entire leg bone stays attached to the skin, and then you wrap cotton around the legs to make it look like it has flesh again. Before, they just used to inject formaldehyde in the little fleshy part of this part of the wing.
From start to finish, each piece can take days of painstaking work.
He would go at 9 in the morning. Sometimes he wouldn't come home till 8 o'clock at night.
Steve's dedication pays off. Soon his shop is attracting customers from all over North America and beyond.
What kind of money can you make doing taxidermy?
A good sale that we had was $150,000 when we sold 2 containerfuls of animals to Japan.
His storefront on Kingsway was a Vancouver icon. And certainly when you walked in, you realized you were walking into someone's obsession.
Rachel Poliquin, Ph.D., is author of a scholarly history of taxidermy called The Breathless Zoo.
What I've done with taxidermy is to explore if it has any relevancy in today's world, what is its history, what is its meaning. Great taxidermy is when you think that the creature might just reanimate in some way.
Reanimate is right. See those lions with Ben Stiller? Steve Kulash goes Hollywood after the break.
But first, our strange inheritance quiz question. What's the oldest museum taxidermy display? An owl in Greece, a dodo in China, or a crocodile in Switzerland? The answer in a moment. So, what's the oldest museum taxidermy display? The answer is C. A crocodile in the National History Museum in St. Gallen, Switzerland, dates from 1623.
By the mid-1970s in Vancouver, Steve Kulash has established a thriving taxidermy business and himself as a legend in the field.
He was a different guy. Different cat.
At the same time, tragedy stalks the Kulash family. In 1981, Steve's wife Rachel dies of cancer at age 38. 7 years later, Steve Jr. drowns in a boating accident.
The death of my mother and my older brother crushed him. It just made him be closer to us because we're all he had.
Wow, how did your family manage after that?
We just dug ourselves into our work and just kept going.
Yeah, I think that looks good.
Indeed, long hours at work proved to be therapeutic.
And then you're going to open it a bit, right?
As his reputation grows, new clients come calling. Some from Vancouver's burgeoning film industry.
His first prop was the Grizzly Adams movie.
Grizzly Adams, his first big break.
And it just snowballed from there.
They would commission us to make a 10-foot by 4-foot thick grizzly bear for MacGyver.
Then another action figure places an order.
For the first Rambo movie, they wanted to rent for the sheriff's office.
Speaking of movie rentals, do these felines look familiar? If so, you're probably one of the tens of millions who bought a ticket for the 2006 hit film, Night at the Museum. Yep, Steve Kulash was the one who made them movie stars. They're the pride of his collection.
Is the Hall of African Medals.
He found them and stuffed them. And then digital artists made them attack Ben Stiller. Down, boy.
Did you catch him?
All by myself.
Where were you?
So, following his passion is paying off for Kulash.
And we have schnapps? Yeah.
A job he loves, and the freedom and money to take hunting and fishing trips and safaris all across the globe.
My dad could speak a few languages, loved to travel the world. This is my dad on one of his hunts for mountain lion.
That could be my favorite picture.
I I'm 50, he was 70. When we went hunting, I still couldn't keep up to him.
That's Steve's coal.
Yeah.
Steve's friend, Herb Karras, shared many of these adventures.
He could handle himself up a mountain or down a mountain, or stay overnight in the woods if you had to.
Very nice, son.
Yeah, very good luck I had today.
Yes.
In 2009, Kulash gets recognition not just as a master of taxidermy, but as a bona fide artist. His work is featured in a museum show of animal art called Ravishing Beasts. Rachel Poliquin is the exhibit's curator.
Steve's taxidermy was great. It reflected who he was, and it had a certain charisma and passion to it.
The following year, Kulash is preparing to pursue one of his other passions, an international hunting expedition. Then one night in March 2010, his son Stacy, who lives in the basement of the family home, is awakened by the smoke alarm.
I open up my bedroom door, there is a 5-foot fire.
As Stacy runs next door to phone the fire department, his dad makes a fatal mistake.
He went and tried to put the fire out himself when he could have just walked right out the front door.
Could you see? Could you breathe?
I tried to get him out of the basement, but there was too much smoke. I couldn't get back down there.
Steve Kulash gets trapped amid piles of boxes and equipment.
A while later, they told us that our father passed away.
He leaves behind the business where he'd worked side by side with his sons, filled with nearly 200 mounted animals. That's not including the metaphorical elephant in the living room. Can a taxidermy business really thrive in the 21st century? And if it can, is Stacy Kulash the right guy to do it?
Did you ever say, I know I can, I know I'm good, but it's not for me?
That's next.
Here's another quiz question for you. What animal was first thought to be a hoax perpetrated by a rogue taxidermist? The platypus, flying squirrel, or giraffe? The answer in a moment. So, what animal was first thought to be a hoax created by a rogue taxidermist? The answer is A, the platypus. In 1798, when British explorers sent home the first pelt of the Australian mammal, scientists thought it was a hoax and that a taxidermist had sewn a duck's bill onto a mammal's body. When more pelts arrived in England, they acknowledged it was real. But if you're wondering about rogue taxidermy, don't change that channel.
4 years after their father's death, Brian Kulash and his brother Stacy are struggling with their strange inheritance, a taxidermy business, plus hundreds of creatures crafted by their father, a legend in the field. They face one big complication when they lose their lease on the shop their dad occupied for more than 40 years. Almost 200 mounted specimens plus 8 freezers full of skins have to be moved to a barn outside Vancouver.
If someone came along and said, I have to have them all,
Definitely.
how much would you want for everything you have right now?
$270,000.
That's not exactly just a round number. You've thought about it.
Yes?
The brothers insist that their dad's work would go for at least that much back in the day. Will it get that now? Stay tuned.
Let's flip it over and inspect to find if there's any stray threads anywhere.
Okay.
Meanwhile, like his father did, Stacy Kulash gets calls from Hollywood.
2 months ago, I was working on a life-size beaver for a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. I had to make it so that the belly could be reopened so that the actor could be skinning it on camera.
Good work if you can get enough of it.
At the end of the day, it's always about the dollars. You can't pay your bills on good intentions.
Did you ever say, I know I can, I know I'm good, but it's not for me?
Well, this is what I trained for over 30 years, so I'm just going to keep on doing what my dad taught me.
It's only between Stacy and I, so we're in solidarity because we're brothers. I'm a meat cutter, but I've recently retired, and I need to regroup my family and push this to as far as we can go.
And that may mean going pretty far out there to the land of jackalopes, Pegasus squirrels, and whatever you want to call this creepy creature.
I took the back vertebrae of a fallow deer and I made a walking cane with it.
Taxidermy, going rogue. That's next.
Now back to Strange Inheritance.
Nobody has an inheritance like the one that we've been bequeathed.
It almost seems like Brian and Stacy Kulash's strange inheritance came a few centuries too late.
Taxidermy really has its origins in a post-Columbus era of exploration when people were going out around the world and discovering new lands.
Scholar Rachel Poliquin says in the 1800s, taxidermy really took off in the US, Canada, and Europe, growing from a scientific pursuit into a very common element of home decor.
In the 19th century, there's the age of colonial hunting, and then it gets into that whole other desire to display your manliness.
Throughout much of the 20th century, hanging one of these heads on your wall was still the cat's meow.
It was either the largest one you'd ever seen, it was the hardest to kill. It really becomes this souvenir and this point to tell a story about yourself and about your encounter with the animal.
That's one reason Steve Kulash's talent was in high demand.
I learned being by his hip from when I was 6 years old.
A talent his sons inherited.
You think I can handle the real thing?
Possibly.
Should we give it a try?
We're going to glue some eyes in on this mannequin for the next project I'm working on. Yeah, there's a whole selection of eyeballs. This is one of the ones that we'll be using. That's the way that the eye wants to go on.
A little glue?
Right along the rim.
Okay, with my luck, it'll be cross-eyed.
So we'd go right here.
Yes. Perfect.
Here's looking at you, kid.
Poliquin says traditional taxidermy is now less popular for a host of reasons. A cultural shift toward conservation over conquest has redefined the art form. Still, Poliquin sees hope for the Kulash boys.
There has been a revival in taxidermy recently. I think it ultimately becomes a very individual process of how you go forward.
So, what do you do with that taxidermy business you inherited? In an era when many people see a mounted head and think comic strip gag. If you're the Kulash brothers, you plant tongue firmly in cheek and branch out into a new hipster movement called rogue taxidermy.
Rogue taxidermy is certainly becoming its own art form. It's putting bits of animals together. There is the Carnival Nights contest in Brooklyn where people bring in their strange rogue taxidermy pieces.
We've actually done some hipster taxidermy ourselves. That was a fantasy mount that I did for a TV show. I used the squirrel skin and pigeon wings.
Adorable.
Oh, it was funny.
I guess.
The jackalopes were done for a cafe-type restaurant called the Cactus Club. The antlers are from a white-tailed deer.
Some of Stacy's creations go beyond fantasy to the macabre.
I took the back vertebrae of a fallow deer, and it had like a miniature human skull on the very top of it that was chrome, and I made a walking cane with it. That sold for $650.
Not your father's taxidermy.
You do whatever you have to in taxidermy to keep your doors open.
Which doesn't mean Brian and Stacy are discounting their dad's legacy. They still intend to unload that Noah's Ark menagerie they inherited for a pretty price. If not in one big boatload, then 2 by 2, or at least one at a time.
We had a lady that came and bought a tiger from us. The tiger was $18,000.
A promising start, but a drafty barn in the middle of nowhere is not exactly a customer magnet.
You need a new place.
Yeah.
They're saving to open up a new shop, confident that their strange inheritance still has a future.
It's only between Stacy and I. And so we're just trying to carry on and keep our name going in this business.
As author and curator Rachel Poliquin observes, death makes taxidermy possible. It seems fitting this strange inheritance will long preserve the bond between a departed dad and his devoted sons.
He is legendary. He taught me his whole life. Little things, big things. He always had something to offer.
My father was basically my best friend.
We're hoping to still dominate and be on top where we should be.
Kulash rules.
You know it.
In his day, Steve Kulash stuffed a lot of trophy animals, but his old buddy Herb Karras once found him hard at work on a cat, as in kitty cat. You mounting pets now, Herb asked? Well, Steve explained that the animal belonged to a neighborhood woman and had been her beloved companion for 15 years. Herb says Steve was carefully adjusting the whiskers to give Kitty the perfect feline expression, gazing lovingly at her owner. What a guy. I'm Jamie Colby for Strange Inheritance. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, you can't take it with you.
Do you have a strange inheritance story you'd like to share with us? We'd love to hear it. Send me an email or go to our website, strangeinheritance.com.